If the school doesn't report it, there's going to be an issue with that, whereas at Villa and Dilbarton and Marstown Beard, that isn't the case. There's not going to be anyone to say, oh wow, you didn't do that, sorry. Which gives me a lot of discomfort, thinking that even though we're all really well-intended, I don't know that the people that run the other schools are as well-intended to just protect themselves. And to me, it feels like a matter sort of like what Melanie's saying, that I went to Morristown High. When my family moved to Morris Plains in like 1982, 81, the riots were 5 years before that, and the rumors about how terrible the schools were, I went to the school thinking, oh man, am I going to have to be scared? And it wasn't anything like that. But this community has been battling against that information, and I think to myself, so here's going to be like another, our fabulous colleague from the press is here. It's going to be another ticker of public school, check, 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 check. Another thing that we're doing wrong. And guess what? For everyone who isn't here for worrying about vaping, it affects our community, because when the schools are great in the community, guess what? Your property taxes go up. So it affects everyone, the public perception of our community. So I think that's a problem. The video that you showed, at the very end, the kids are like, if they ban the flavors, that would make a big difference. If they ban the flavors, if they ban the flavors, if they ban the flavors, if they ban the flavors. That was like the whole output of that whole video. And I'm like, I'm watching this video to sell this ordinance, but nothing is selling this ordinance. There's really only one thing, and I'm going to put a pin in that. There's one thing that is potentially selling that ordinance. It's my understanding that vaping sales in this country have increased 40% in the past year. I don't mean this to offend you, but biannual checks to our sellers seems like we're really taking an aggressive stance with our sellers. Like, I can't reconcile those two things. That doesn't seem like that's really aggressive. I'm thinking monthly might be enough. Because Jeff, to your point, yeah, it might not be those sellers, there could be other sellers, but the bottom line is these 11 to 14-year-olds that are really mostly who this was targeted to are just victims. And to the communication that you and I, Jeff, have had many times about this is deterrence. For the kids that didn't start, this is deterrence. For the kids who already started, this is just in your system, in the system. Okay, maybe it's not a criminal record, but it's curious to me that we're saying that we checked and there's never been a repeat, so I don't know why we need this. If there's never been a repeat, what is it for then? And if it's a I'm not sure, I appreciate the words, this is a partnership. I don't see the truth of this really being a partnership. I do believe what the schools are attempting to do is more of a partnership. And I do think, I've heard a lot of good things about the relationships that the various officers in the schools have. There is a partnership that goes along with that. I'm not sure I see the partnership aspect in what's written in this ordinance, although I do appreciate that there's more clarity. I do have a lot of concern about, and I have a freshman at the high school, so she's only 14 years old, and actually she won't be 18 until she just about goes to college. But I know that this was targeted towards this presentation, I believe, was targeted towards the parents of younger kids. But there are people in this room who have kids who are already addicted, and they're very close to 18 years old. And right here, and actually someone else up there mentioned the teenage brain, and 25, which really I think that's the average. It's 22 for girls, 27 for boys. But then Chief mentioned when they're adults at 18, well, those two things don't reconcile. If they're already addicted at 16, and then at 8, it really wasn't spelled out here, but 18 to 20, it's much harsher consequences. But by then, if you're catching them when they're 18, they probably have been doing it for 5 years. And if you think this ordinance and community service or whatever is going to help them, it's not. I'm sorry, it's just not. That's just the truth. So, okay, I'm going to take the pin out of the one reason why this ordinance could make sense, which I'm going to negate everything I just said. If what you said is true, if that ordinance that the Bucco and I don't know the other person's name have implemented, if our ordinance can supersede that ordinance, if it passes, then that would be, in my opinion, the only reason why we should have this ordinance, because we should protect our kids, because our health official said, well, there might be something. Did everyone read my op-ed 2.5 months ago in Morristown Green that said we should be going after the sellers? We sort of said we're sort of doing it. My friend Catherine sort of said, step one should be this, step two should be that. I just can't believe that our very first ordinance in January of 2019 was an ordinance to punish children. I can't believe that there wasn't things that were more pressing than that. And going after the sellers, I saw some nodding heads or shaking heads of like, no, we can't do more. Other communities have done more. I'm totally in agreement that, because really, if to your point, our kids are saying it's here, but really it's there, it's probably still someplace in our broader community. And our community is so complex because we have three different towns that come into the high school, even though this really ordinance is really for Frelinghuysen. But in terms of cracking down, that really should be the focus, is the prevention, like Catherine said, but the sellers, if you all can influence the state legislators, do that. Do that first. Do this in 2 years. I don't understand why, like I said, unless there's a state ordinance where this can supersede, I'm all for it. But otherwise, please, no thank you.